Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Supertasker and Viraltag webinar. During the next 30 minutes, we're going to be discussing great time-saving hacks to help you run your business more efficiently. Before we start, just want to introduce ourselves. My name is Ariel Kranzow. I'm the head of U.S. Community Development for Supertasker. Through physical events and educational webinars like this one, my goal is to spread awareness of Supertasker to help entrepreneurs, small businesses, and startups and help them connect with previously vetted freelancers to produce their digital tasks. Supertasker allows you to get design work and web fixes done super fast without going through the process of sorting through portfolios and negotiating price. You simply order a task from our a la carte menu, upload any relevant assets, and you get the results back within as little as an hour for a set price from one of our previously vetted designers, developers, or copywriters. I want to introduce you to our partner for this webinar. Her name is Jilly Bedanes. She's the Director of Marketing for Viraltag.
Yeah, thank you so much, Ariel. It's really great to be here. We're really happy to be partnering with Supertasker for this webinar and speaking to all of you today. Viraltag is a marketing platform designed for visual content. We help businesses discover great visual content that will engage their users and then schedule it out on social media so they can reach new audiences at the moments that matter most. We're integrated with Pinterest, Tumblr, Facebook, Twitter, and I'm very excited to announce, actually for the first time in public, that we are integrating with Instagram. Starting on Monday, we're coming out with an Instagram integration. So really excited about that.
Great. So if you have any questions during the webinar itself, or if you have any questions just generally about Supertasker or Viraltag, you can tweet at SupertaskerHQ and at Viraltag using the hashtag webinar, or you can use the chat box in the webinar window itself on the bottom right. And we will get to the Q&A at the end of the webinar, but feel free to actually ask the questions as we go along, and we'll just start from the top and answer the questions at the end. What we're actually going to be covering today is how to connect content to your business goals. We're going to talk about content creation for your website, social media, and email marketing. We're going to talk about content curation, and lastly, we'll cover content management and tools to help you accomplish all of these tasks with ease.
Great, and I'll just start it off by, before we dive in talking about actual content, you want to take a moment to think about where you are today, because making a plan and a strategy before you get started is really the best time-saving tool, because you're going to make sure you're not doing anything wasteful or wasting any resources, before you actually get started. So we like to think about, what is your business objective? Take stock of where your company is today and where you're trying to go. What is your goal? Maybe you're just getting started and your objective is to acquire your first users or customers. Maybe you've been around for a while and you're more interested in customer retention and loyalty. It's going to be different for different businesses and at different times. So just decide what it is for you today and set that goal, and then choose metrics that align to that goal. So for example, if you're looking to acquire customers, you might be more interested in traffic, in clicks. If you're looking to engage, you're going to be paying more attention to those engagement metrics. One of the most time-efficient strategies to meet business goals we find is through content, and that's why that's really the focus of this webinar today. Content is interesting though in that vein because it can also be a huge time suck if you don't do it efficiently. So, if you don't have an efficient, thoughtful strategy, you can just waste a lot of time spending time creating content that isn't going to be fruitful for you, or or spending your time digging through and kind of lost in the social media dump of content. So instead, it's really important to be deliberate about what you spend your time creating, and be thoughtful, and then in that way content can be a really efficient and effective way to save time and grow your business. A big factor of that is visual content. Visual content is really the most effective way to engage your users, to attract attention, and to drive traffic. A piece of content with a visual receives 95% more clicks and shares, engagement than a piece of content without a visual. So, especially creating visual content is really the most powerful strategy for you. So that's why we're focusing on content today, talking about creating content, but then also repurposing content and complementing that content with curation and measurement. And I will let Ariel kick it off with our steps to content creation.
Great. So to begin, I just want to talk briefly about there are sort of a bunch of different areas where content creation is covered. The first itself is within your website or your blog. Then you have social media and email newsletters. There are a few other areas where you create content that that we're not going to necessarily talk about today, but everything that we talk about is going to be relevant for all different areas. So specifically when we're talking about creating content for your website, the reason why you want to do that is that your website is your home base for everything else you do on the web. And, just next slide, sorry. Everything that you do on the web is pushing towards your website. You want people to go to your website, you want people to buy things if you're an e-commerce shop, or even if you just have services, you want people to actually interact with your website on a regular basis. You want people to interact with you through all different areas, but essentially they're leading back to your website. A big way that you can actually do that is to create content specifically for your website that trickles down into other areas of your marketing purposes. The first thing is updating images and content on your website regularly is something that's going to keep people coming back. You don't want people to go to your website 2 weeks apart and have the same content on there, or else what are they going to your site for? They're coming to see if you have anything new, if you've updated anything. And then even if it's their first time, they want to see what you've done in the past. So constantly updating the content specifically on your homepage is going to help you do that. What you can do to actually create that content are a few different things. One is that I think adding a blog to your website is the best way to create new content in an organized and regular way to your site. What you can do, it's visual, you could add photos, it's interesting content, and what you need to do is you need to just pick a topic every week and get it written and write it out for you, and then you can use that content and share it wherever you want. Also, adding social feeds to your site, so integrating what you do on social media onto your website is another way to bring all of what you're doing on the web full circle. Specifically within Supertasker, if you want, there's a way for you to actually get blog posts written. You might not necessarily need a blog post written every single week, but you may need one done once in a while, or every other week. But you can, for very inexpensive, get a great blog post written by vetted blog writers for a set price and a set timeline. So you'll actually get a blog post back within 3 hours. And something to think about is that you can actually choose the type of voice, the type of content. You can give as much or as little input as you need for that time. For social media specifically, a lot of what you can do for social media, if you really don't have a lot of time, and Jilly will talk about repurposing a lot later, but you can actually reuse your blog post and your website content on social media to actually draw people in. A big thing that you can do is that if you have an events calendar, you should always be going to events, suggesting events. If you update your events calendar, that's just one piece of content that you can use to get people interested in what you're doing. And it's not something that you have to think a lot about. It's something that you're already doing, but it's a good way to get people to not only share something because you're inviting people to go to something specific, but you're actually not putting a lot of effort into that particular post, and you're staying consistent with your schedule of posts that you've decided you need to post X amount of times each day. Another way is posting pictures. Is something that you can do in many different ways. One way is to create your own relevant images based on memes that exist. So if you can find something and a topic that works for you, then you didn't really have to go through the creative process of thinking of something new. You don't always have to be reinventing the wheel when it comes to content. Use content that people are familiar with, but that you've put your spin on it to make it work for your business. Another thing that will actually help you with your social media is planning your posts. You don't want to just do it ad hoc. You don't want to just randomly post, or else it's going to seem that way. If you actually have specific types of posts that you know that you're going to think about and that you're actually going to be creating, it'll seem much more cohesive of a plan as opposed to just thrown together. And when people are going and looking at your social media, they're going to see a cohesive story as opposed to randomly selected items. And again, if you don't have enough time in your day, one week or the other week, there's a lot of tools out there to help you create content, and feel free to use them. They're there for a reason, and they're there to help you. The next thing we're going to be talking about are email newsletters. Something that I think is really interesting about email newsletters is that they're still the #1 way that people advertise, that like successful advertisements. Email newsletters are more successful than social media a lot of the time. And something that you can do to grow your email list is creating exclusive content. You'd want to actually have and share something that within your newsletters that you're not sharing everywhere else, because it gives people a reason to open up your newsletters if they know they're going to get something that they can't get anywhere else. So think about that as you're creating all of your different content, to think about what you're going to set aside for your newsletter, or even if you do exclusive content on Twitter, think about where you're going to save content for and where you're going to use it all around. Again, another thing about newsletters is designing good-looking newsletters. We're all becoming really more design savvy, and you can tell when someone just didn't get it when they were creating a newsletter. And then you also see when you open up a newsletter and you're like, wow, this person, even if it's simple, did a good job designing a newsletter. So really take that into consideration. And through Supertasker, you can actually get someone to design your newsletter. If you don't have that skill within your small team, you can actually very inexpensively have someone create a couple of different versions of newsletters for you to use. Also, test your subject lines. All of the major email platforms have tools for you to test your subject lines. You want to understand what works, what doesn't work. Read up on it. There's a lot of posts out there on subject lines, and there's a lot of information. And you'll get more comfortable and you'll understand what works for you and your business. Again, planning your posts. You want to actually plan your social media and integrate it with your newsletter posts, so that another way that you can actually create social posts is announcing that you have an email newsletter that just came out, and have a link to sign up to your newsletter. It's it's a different way to use two forms of marketing to connect it to the bigger picture. And then whatever you do, whether it's blogging, social media, newsletters, the main message that I really want everyone to get today is, when you're creating all of this content, when you're, whether you're repurposing it or anything else, you really want to be consistent. It's far better to start small and less frequent than starting with a bang and posting every day and not being able to keep up with that initial excitement. And as you get better at creating your own content, you'll see the different opportunities for content that are out there. And part of that is borrowing content from other sources. And Jilly's going to continue and tell you all about how you can repurpose content and make it your own and make it great.
Yeah, great segue. I think I totally agree. Consistency is such a huge part of that. And unless you have, as with our topic today of time saving, we don't all have time to be creating amazing original content every day. And curation is a really great way and a valuable way to complement the content that you're creating. It's a great way to build your own presence, and which will, over time get you a bigger audience and attract more people to your brand, and have a bigger impact on your business at the end of the day. It's, again, also really time efficient. You can set up a strategy and then just execute on that consistently. So yeah, we definitely like to think about curation as kind of a complement to your content. Before you start with your curation, spend a little bit of time studying your audience to figure out what they're really going to value in terms of curation. So do some quick research on your audience and the ideas that they're sharing. There are a lot of great free tools where we can do this. I have an image here from BuzzSumo, which is one of my favorites. You can type in a keyword or topic and see the top content that's being shared related to that keyword, who's sharing it, what sort of engagement it's gotten, how it's been shared on different social media, and click through that and kind of pay attention to the sources, the style of content, and the places, the topics. And that's the sort of stuff that you already know people are interested in, so it's going to give you the most bang for your buck in terms of curation. So yeah, there are a bunch of different apps like BuzzSumo. It's a great one to try out. So these are the things that you want to share. It also inserts you into the conversation. You know that this conversation is already happening. People are already sharing this, and by continuing to share those things, you're going to become more relevant. So pay attention to these topics, and then over time, you're going to start to notice those trends, and you'll become on top of the trends that you know are already going to be popular. It gives you a sense of what people will be interested in the future too. You can also do this on social media, so paying attention to your audience, the people that you're trying to attract their attention. Look at what they're sharing and the style that they're sharing, their behavior on social media, whichever social media that you're focused on. So, for example, if your strategy involves Pinterest, you can look at the boards that people are pinning to and what they're sharing. And this gives you a sense of the topics that they're interested in. And then in terms of the actual strategy tactics behind curation, you want to set up a discovery process so you have the information coming into you as you go about curating. So by discovery process, I mean a way that you will learn about information timely. So you'll be ahead of the trends or ahead of your audience. So you can do this in a few different ways. One thing that I highlight here is by saving RSS feeds. So feeds of blogs, sources. Maybe these are the sources that you were revealed in something like BuzzSumo you found are really popular or especially relevant to your brand or your audience. Save these sources. You can use a tool like Feedly, or if you are using Viraltag, you can pull in your feeds directly into our dashboard. And that lets you keep track of what's coming out, when it's coming out, what's the most relevant information, and then setting up a way to quickly be able to share that wherever you're sharing content. Then you want to make sure you also follow the key influencers and sources of information on any social media that you're using, because again, that's a great way to stay engaged. If it's on Twitter, you can know those people that you want to follow and keep track of what they're sharing, and you can be retweeting them. And every retweet is going to have that ripple effect of getting more people to see who you are and build up your brand. And then over time, as you will become the source of that information, and people will start to identify you with introducing them to new ideas, new topics, exposing them to new trends, and you will become a tastemaker. As Ariel mentioned, newsletters are definitely still a really powerful tool. And if you don't have a lot of fresh content every week, curation is a really great way to add value in those newsletters. And it's, again, really, really easy and time efficient. So there's so much content out there that people are looking for someone who's going to kind of weed through all of that and tell them what they really need to know. So if you can build some curation into your newsletter, 5 things that were related to your brand or interesting things you found, your slight take on something else that's being shared, that's going to create a lot of value for you and your brand, and is a really easy, time efficient way to do that. And then finally, once you've had, what you're creating, you have a plan to create and a plan to curate. A really important part of being effective and efficient with your time is keeping track of everything in one place. So managing what you're doing, you have a plan and making sure you're sticking to it. So if you're working with a bigger team, that's building team workflows, whether it's using maybe a Google spreadsheet even, creating a plan, making sure that people update what they're sharing, and not doing more than what's necessary. And then keeping track, again, back to those metrics that you decided on upfront were related to your goal. And then set a specific time and an amount of time to monitor your content every week or every day if it's necessary, and then stick to that and limit yourself, because I think, as we talked about earlier, one of the biggest problems with content is that you can get so easily sucked into doing too much, spending too much time, way more than's necessary and way more than will be useful to you. So managing your time in one place, and then sticking to that is going to be, it's a simple thing, but it's actually a really powerful hack, which I am trying to implement every day. And again, just checking in regularly, because you don't want to do anything that's not serving your end goal. So make sure you set a regular appointment to check in on those metrics, whatever they are related to your specific content, your specific goal, and making sure that you're getting closer to that goal, you're progressing. And if not, then immediately revising your strategy and making adjustments to keep you on track. And again, as Ariel said, it's really consistency. So making sure that you have this plan, you're creating content, you're curating that content, and you've got a system in place to manage it all in one place. I think especially with content, there's so many different types of content as we've been talking through. You can have people writing your blog posts, or you can be writing content yourself. You can be finding things from different sources. So figuring out just that system for you that's going to keep it all in one place and work well with your own work process is going to be your best key to success. So with that, I think we'll stop here, and we're going to open it up to questions. You can either enter your questions in the question box or in the chat box, or you can tweet at Supertasker or Viraltag and use the hashtag webinar, and we'll answer your questions. So let's see what we have so far. Here's a question on how do you know if you're repurposing too much content? So what's kind of is there a magic number about how many times you should repurpose a type of content? I think for this, if you've created something original, you should be getting as much mileage out of it as you can. And that's based on the different places that you're sharing content. So if you created a blog post, for example, you want to see that, turn that into as many tweets as you can, as many images or different social media shares, depending on the different networks that you're using. And you want to use it in newsletters and other places where you're sharing content. I think where you get into danger of using it too much is if you're sharing the same content on the same networks in a non-unique way. So I think the key here really to repurposing content is making sure that you're bringing something new and valuable every time you share a piece of content, and that's what's going to get you the most bang for your buck.
Wow, that's an excellent question. We have another question, and the question is with repurposing or outsourcing content, how do you actually regulate your brand voice? So what I would say to that is essentially the most important thing you need to do as a company and as a brand is actually identify your brand voice. If you know what your brand voice is going to be, and what I mean by that is, do you have a whimsical voice? Are you, more business oriented? Do you have, do you use a lot of exclamation points when writing, or do you use emojis or not? That's something that you need to decide as a brand, how you want people to perceive what you're saying. And then when you actually are repurposing or outsourcing, you can actually when you're outsourcing, just be really specific about it. Give examples of prior, if you're getting social media posts, send a few examples of prior social media posts. If they're good at what they do, they'll look at it anyway, but it's just easier for them if you say, we're whimsical like this post. And when you're repurposing content, don't just hit retweet blindly. Look at it and see if it matches your voice, and if it doesn't, don't be afraid to edit the content a little bit. Edit it to match the way that you would want to represent that in your company. I think. Are there any other questions that came in?
Yeah, we have a few questions here. Someone said, what is the best way to do email farming? Creating content is cool but expensive. How can this be done in a cheap and efficient way? So a cheap and efficient way to create content for your email email newsletters, I guess.
Okay. I guess I could take that. So if you're looking to create content specifically for your newsletter, I would just go with look at what you're offering and then look at how you can actually um, and effectively share that knowledge. So you don't have to always, and you should not always be selling your product. If if your business has to do with pottery, then maybe you read a really great article on, the history of clay. It doesn't have to be that connected, but you should say, here's some really great information that will be really helpful to somebody who is interested in what you're doing. So a lot of it is thinking outside the box and bringing it into a way that works for you. Do you have anything to add to that, Jilly?
Yeah, no, I think that's a great answer. We have a few other questions coming in. This is kind of a hypothetical question. Someone has asked, say you're a startup, you're an engineer, you're just really focused on getting your product up to speed, and you want to invest in content to be implemented maybe once a month or every other week, and you want to spend, he said, $100 a month. What are some strategies to get going on right away?
You want to take that?
Sure. Yeah. So I think a big part of it is definitely the repurposing. So if you have $100 a month, that's a significant amount to get some content made for you if that's your interest in outsourcing it. So I would just then be really specific about doing your research, spending a little bit of time. It really doesn't take a lot of time to do that research, but to figure out what's going to be most valuable to your customers. Is it like, what's something that's really going to teach them something new, or or catch their eye, something that's a little bit similar to things that are being successfully shared in that area and like along that topic, but are not being talked about now. And of course, connect to your brand, connect to your product, but try and get really specific about what that might be. And then I'd say just spend your $100 outsourcing to someone to help you create that content, and then figure out all the different ways that you can repurpose it, which are a lot. So, if it's kind of a like instructional thing, there's just so many different ways you can repurpose that into a video, slide share, sharing it in different pieces on social media and your newsletter, and then retweeting all of the ways and sharing out all the ways that people engage with that content. Do you have anything to add to that, Ariel?
No, I think that was fully covered.
Okay, great. Yeah, actually, lots of questions. A lot of people have asked about getting links to the tools that we mentioned, and we can definitely send those in a follow-up email. So don't worry about that. I know we threw a lot at you very quickly.
Yeah, we'll send a follow-up email early next week with a recording of the webinar and links to every resource that we mentioned. And we'll probably add a few that we didn't. Mm-hmm. So look out for that.
Someone asked, this is probably a question for you, Ariel. Someone asked about copyright infringement. How do you guys think about that when you're outsourcing content?
That's a huge topic and a huge question that we get on a regular basis. And I will say 100%, I'm not a lawyer and have no legal training. So take what I say, not 100%. Take it with a grain of salt. But essentially, if you're doing stuff with outsourcing, especially through Supertasker, everyone on our site is vetted and understands the different things that go on especially within graphics. They understand the idea of copywriting. Nobody's new to this. Everyone's been doing it for a long time. But it's something to really be thought about, I I think Google image search actually has a section now where you can actually find Creative Commons licenses. That's the only advice I'm going to give when it comes to copyright information. But just make sure that if you're using images, always source them. So whether that's on Facebook, I usually just say, via that website. And so people can link back to the original source. I've never had a problem with that. Or just go on, if you're looking for images on Flickr, you can sort out the Creative Commons licenses, which people are happy for you to use, for sort of whatever purpose. Um, just don't do a general Google image search and take the first thing that you see, because a lot of those images are copyrighted.
Yeah, we try and
Oh, and also, sorry, if you're in New York in about a month, we're actually doing a workshop with a law firm on copyright infringement. So you can, if you're in New York, you can email me about it, and if not, email me anyways, and I will take lots of notes and send it to you.
that was a so perfectly made promo. That's awesome. Yeah, we try and think about that too, and we have a few features within our platform to help people find photos that they have permission to use. So we have a few sources where you can automatically search, so you know that if you find something there, you can use it on social media. And then different social platforms also have different rules. So on Pinterest, there's a little bit more liberty to share other people's content since that's kind of baked into the nature of the product. Um, there are a few questions about quality, so probably specifically to writing, outsourcing blog posts. Someone said they have a pretty technical product, and they're wondering how to get someone to write more technical stuff. They said, any suggestions for non-fluff content? And then someone asked kind of a similar question just about, being really, really keen to quality and wanting to make sure that they get the best quality that really fits their standards out of outsourced work.
Sure. So with outsourced work, I'd say writing the brief is the most important part when you're actually asking somebody to do work for you. When it comes to the whole point of Supertasker is that everyone on there is a vetted writer. For the technical content, you just have to be as specific as possible. If you want just descriptions of products, you might need, or descriptions of services that are technical. I would just maybe put together, whether it's a glossary of terms or a brief overview of saying, this is what we need to talk about. And you might just need to do a little bit more, put a little bit more effort into prepping your content. And then same with quality and same with, what I said about, using your brand voice is that just be as specific as possible. When someone's doing work for you, they don't want to do a bad job. They want to give you something that you can use and that you can be proud of, because then they'll get more work out of it. So if you can be as specific as possible, and always be quick to answer questions, as I do a lot of freelance work and I'm always waiting because I didn't get the right information or enough information. So just give as much information as you can give and allow there to be a little bit of back and forth so that you can be available to answer the questions in a timely manner.
Great. Someone has asked a Viraltag specific question about our integration with Instagram I mentioned. The question is, will you be able to post to Instagram from Viraltag? And the answer is yes, you will be able to schedule posts in the future to Instagram. So right now on our platform, you can schedule posts to Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest, and Tumblr and LinkedIn. And starting on Monday, you'll be able to schedule to Instagram, which is very exciting. And I guess that's a good time to mention our coupon codes. don't you think, Ariel?
Of course, it's perfect time.
Um, yeah, so we're giving everyone in this webinar 50% off their first 2 months of subscribing to ViralTag. Just use the coupon code 50 off 2 months.
And for Supertasker, you can actually get $50 of credit in your account using the code Supertasker NA, which stands for North America. You can also, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to myself or Jilly. Our emails are there on the screen. You can also just reply to any email you got from us about the event. You can find us on Twitter. We're sort of all over the place. And we really just want to thank you guys for taking the time to listen. You guys asked some fantastic questions. I think we have time for maybe one more question if there is.
Yeah,
a
no,
question. I
I
don't
think
know
that
if there's
those
a
were
few
all the
more.
questions. There were a bunch that were kind of on the same theme, but I think
Yeah,
that we
okay, great.
covered everything.
Great. So again, if you come up with any other questions, please shoot us emails. We will send a follow-up email early next week with a recording of the webinar, so you could feel free to watch it again, share it with anyone you want, and we'll have links to all the different things we spoke about, and again with our contact information. So if you come up with any questions you have, even if that's 3 months from now, we'll be here to answer your questions. And thank you so much for listening.
Yeah, thanks everyone. Have a great rest of your day.